when you get hired into a new role, how much of that new role do you actually know how to do versus you figuring out, right? And like, it's probably a lot. And so it's the same thing with everybody using the software, right? It's like, you're not hiring all these people that are like going into a role to use the software and they're rock stars, right? Like, it's like the new job. It's something that got assigned to them and they didn't even know it existed before. A big portion of those folks aren't going to know how best to use that software. A customer education program in and of itself, even if the content like didn't exist and you just did a cohort analysis of people who signed up versus people who didn't, the people who signed up are going to most likely have higher retention, right? They're going to have higher product usage because they're opting in to learn because they're trying to do something, right? So like customer education teams actually have like a head start when it comes to showing the influence on these metrics.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we have a special guest, Gabby Rice here. Gabby is our lead here for companies who are scaling with Thinkific. Hi Gabby.
Hi Melissa.
Let's talk customer education. Gabby, what are some common trends that you're seeing with your clients who work with you in this arena?
We're seeing a lot of small to mid-sized companies come to us, to our sales team, because they're really wanting to invest in customer education. I would say we have some facts for you here. There's a study that found that 87% of customers say they can actually work more independently when they're trained on a product. And customer-centric companies are 60% more profitable than those who aren't. So there is definitely a need and a demand for customer education.
Okay, but like here's the problem. Here's a snitch in all of that, and including we had our own learning experience with that as well, is that not everybody knows how to go about customer education. It is actually like baby in the field. It's like maybe a decade old that people have actually been learning and building these things out. Many mistakes. But that's why we've invited the godfather of all of this, Chris LoDolce. He's from SaaS Academies, and he is actually the previous director of HubSpot Academy. And like HubSpot Academy is kind of like the creme de la creme of the mountain of academies right now. You're like, how do I knock off that top spot?
Just a piece of it, yeah.
And he's here today to share his wealth of knowledge. And you can find out more about him in the link below at SaaS Academies.
Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gabby. Hi, Melissa. Great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
So why is everybody getting customer education wrong?
I think it comes down to the difference between investing tactically or strategically into your educational programming at your business. So from a high level, that's really where I think the problems start. But if we zoom out for a second and we take a minute to think a little bit about what is this word customer education, and even more, where is customer education going within a SaaS business and an entire SaaS business's ecosystem, we see a couple trends that are starting to take place. The first is the move from just a help articles, a knowledge base, or some short product training videos to this idea of customer education, right? A little bit more of a holistic, strategic initiative where we're trying to help our customers be more successful using their software and also be more successful in their roles using the software which they've purchased from these businesses. The next step in what we're starting to see businesses that typically are a little bit further along the investment timeline towards IPO or acquisition is this idea of a corporate academy. So how can we think about our customer education content that's being used to educate our customers and begin to stack that with industry content, as well as customer partner content, and then employee content. So how can we bring the learning that's taking place across the entire ecosystem and bring it into one cohesive, consistent learning experience? And that's where really we see, at least from our perspective at SaaS Academy Advisors, where we see this transition from a customer education program to a more holistic corporate academy.
what would the tactical things look differently? Because you said customer education were like those blog articles, those help articles. What would a corporate academy version, like a better version of that, like what would that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when we're thinking about the difference between a customer education and a corporate academy, some of the things would be if you're thinking about creating a course, let's say, to develop category ownership or thought leadership in your category, you might create a course to teach industry professionals on how to do their job better. Lots of times that will sit within one department and be siloed off. And then you'll have your customer success team, and they'll be responsible for creating educational content to help customers be successful, right? A very tactical version of that would be like product training. Click here, do this, right? But then the more strategic customer education programs would say, well, wait a second, for someone to be good at their job, that industry training that existed in one silo, 50% of that could actually really help set the scene for how someone could use X, Y, or Z feature or tool to the best of their ability. So let's not just teach somebody how to do product training. Let's just teach somebody how to do their job well with that software. So now you've really stacked this idea of repurposing the industry content with the content that's specific to customers as well. And then it keeps going, right? And then on top of that, you can stack the partner or agency training. So we know our partners need to know how to be a good X, Y, and Z in the industry. We know that they need to know our product. Now let's add on top of that, what are some things that make partners great partners? Right? And that's the type of training and certifications we've had with the partner side. Now all of a sudden we've had essentially typically in businesses, 3 separate teams creating similar content. And we're repurposing it in a more linear way that's going to reduce costs for the business, but also it's going to create a level of consistency across the ecosystem, right? So when that partner is talking to a prospect or a customer, that conversation, the language they use, how they're approaching things is going to be similar to that of an employee that's working with a customer or partner. So it's really this idea of how do we create that consistent learning experience across the ecosystem versus having these siloed groups across the business that are creating similar content in their own silos and not leveraging each other's work efficiently.
That's exactly where we're at right now with the Thinkific.
Yeah, right? That rings true for us.
That rings so true for us. We're like moving, and we passed IPO, but we're really moving on that trend right now, like as it's already happening. Literally partner education, product education, and industry education. And like Plus has just recently joined our academy now.
Yeah, it's like the different level of business. How do you teach somebody who has already launched, is now scaling? Like it's a whole other field of education, which is, something we're definitely expanding on, but in early stages. So what are some of the emerging trends?
Beyond customer education becoming something that is more and more of a strategic investment in businesses, I'd say the biggest trend that I'm seeing is this idea of a customer education team evolving to be something larger within a business, a corporate academy. So when we think about a customer education team, strategic team, right, we're looking at a team that's focused on really helping educate customers, right, in service of improving top and bottom line metrics, right? So customer education teams exist to help improve retention, upselling, cross-selling, product usage, NPS, and there's many more metrics within a SaaS business model that customer education can influence. And this is typically where most businesses are today or are more moving towards. The first generation of SaaS businesses that have invested in customer education, we see them going the next step further, which is this idea of, wait a second, our business is educating folks across the entire customer journey, whether that's marketing, on the marketing side with blogs, videos, webinars. We have our sales team, and then all the way through to the end, this idea of educating our own employees, right? So businesses that are really focused on how can we holistically align all of our learning teams in service of a unified customer experience is where we see businesses going from customer education teams to full-on strategic corporate academies.
So clearly you have a lot of knowledge and experience. You've been in this industry for a really long time. You basically built HubSpot Academy to what it is today, which is a thought leader in its industry and definitely a household name for inbound marketing. I know as a marketer, I have used HubSpot many times. So how did all of this come to be? What happened that actually led to that formulaic success?
So it's a lot. We're going to jump right in here. I have to say, though, thank you for the accolades, but I wouldn't be doing HubSpot Academy justice if it wasn't to mention Mark, Sarah, Lindsay, and a whole group of 50 plus people at this point in time who contributed a lot of years of their life to making HubSpot Academy what it is. But I'm happy to share that story. And really where we started was from all the business books. As we're starting this team, we realized we had to have a purpose beyond moving business metrics. And so for us, that purpose was to educate and inspire people so that we together transform the way the world does marketing. And that was really kind of our driving or our rallying call and something we always focused on. And we started with online instructor-led training. Right? Commonplace now, back in 2012, it was still pretty novel. But this idea of how can we train a group of people and actually create a better experience, right? Because that collective knowledge of 10 or 20 people is far greater than any one person, even if they're the expert. And so we started with this instructor-led online training, and very quickly, both from feedback from our customers, but also from the business's focus on scale, we moved to this idea of on-demand training. And that's where, our biggest fear was we had this connection with 30, 40, 50 people at a time. We were looking at the work they were doing in the software. We're giving them feedback. How do we scale that on demand? And that was the first kind of big decision we made, which was, let's keep it simple. Let's keep it with video first, right? Where we want to have workbooks, we want to have guides, but the engagement in many times trumps some of the more typical multimedia learning experiences that you see today. And that was kind of our next big step, and it was working great. And then customers started coming to us, and folks from the industry started coming to us and saying, we want to be able to validate that we know these things or that we can use HubSpot. And that's really where the certifications kind of got their big breath or their big moment to shine at HubSpot, where we went from an inbound marketing certification and a HubSpot marketing software certification and blew that up in 2 years to about 14 different certifications. And that's what really brought us, I'd say, to a much more visible program across the industry and really across the world, which then led to education partner programs. So this was actually something that was more inbound. And what I mean by that is businesses, we're essentially saying we need inbound marketers. And colleges are going through this shift in 2008, but through 2012, 2013, where their metrics as universities wasn't just how many people did we give a diploma to, but it was what's the average starting salary of somebody graduating from our school, right? And what that meant was the skills they need that are going to be valuable enough to land those jobs. And that's where many universities started reaching out to us and saying, hey, we need to teach this inbound thing, right? We need to teach the way businesses are doing marketing today, not the way the textbooks are explaining how it was done in the past. And so for us, that meant how could we repurpose, essentially give our curriculum, our entire certifications to universities to embed into their degrees, their classes.
Whoa.
And
that's how you became a thought leader. That's how you guys became a thought leader. Like if you hit that status, and like I have inbound marketing training, I have a few certifications from HubSpot actually. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And so now all of a sudden we, that did a lot of things. One, that meant students graduating had used HubSpot software, right? Because we gave the software free to the universities. And they actually, when they sat down and were going up against somebody else who had a marketing degree, they were holding up, here are my 3 blog posts I wrote, right? Here's here's how I SEO optimized them, and here are the views that I got, right? And this actually generated 3 leads. How many kids coming out of college in 2012, or maybe even today, can speak to that? I know certainly my internships I could not have. And so that was really big for just helping students get into the industry. And, from now, if you check out, HubSpot Academy and the Education Partner Program, it has grown so much so that now HubSpot pays for students to have internships with customers or with partners, right? So we've actually developed a pipeline of talent coming out of universities into HubSpot's ecosystem, right? Like,
that is so cool.
Pretty awesome, right? All based, though, if we roll it all the way back, right, to those certifications, and behind that, this scalable modular content that can be repurposed and reused across the industry, the customers, the partners, and the employees. So again, if we try to do this in its own silos, the team would be probably 3 times as big and not have the ROI we needed. So it's really kind of thinking again of how can everything be broken down into its smallest, tiniest asset, but then also repurposed and reused in many different ways. And that forced us to say to ourselves, well, how do we take it a step further? And that was this idea of train the trainer, right? So how can we have other people teach on our behalf, whether that was partners, creating courses, or bringing in experts from the outside. And this was a big thing, especially as we went international, but finding ways to have people meet the requirements of what it meant to create a course inside of HubSpot Academy, while also giving them that freedom to share their perspective or their approach. And that was a big step for us as well of saying, wait a second, HubSpot is no longer the de facto only voice in this industry with thought leadership. There's more and more folks who are practicing inbound marketing, coming up with strategies, and we need to find a way and an outlet for them to teach at scale, as well as engage in the communities, et cetera.
So you got those experts then to be part of the academy to teach as well. So it wasn't just your voice.
Exactly. Yep. To teach, be a part of it. And then we're going a little bit out of order here, but with localization, that was a big thing too, which was how are we able to take our base English content, right, and localize that into many different languages, right? So our first attempts, we missed the mark because we translated the content or dubbed over what we were saying. And we totally missed the mark that, different analogies or metaphors didn't work. Right? Hit the ball out of the park. If you're in Europe, you're like, I've never even gone to a baseball game. I don't know the first thing about it, right? Doesn't make sense. There were a lot of things that we needed to do to get our content ready to be localized. And then when it came to that localization part, how can we bring in our partners who could teach on our behalf in those regions?
Mm-hmm. And now you guys have 1 million partners trained and 50,000 certifications awarded, right? It's from the humble days of just instructor led. We're at the it's funny because I love all of this growth, but we're at the section we're at the on demand training, and we're figuring out those next parts. I love it. Should really think about the education partner program.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, go to schools and just be what school did you want to learn how to create courses online, or companies who wanted to, do that stuff, and then teach them ahead of time. And so
absolutely. I mean, with
entrepreneurship,
entrepreneurship with all of the, instructional design, courses, certifications, programs out there as well, right? How could Thinkific come in and be a part of that? I'm sure there's, many different areas to focus on. HubSpot got lucky though, right? The way people were shopping and buying was different back then, and it was changing, right? Yeah. And so that was marketing had to change, and so I think again, I always like to say to the team, we're standing on the top of Mount Everest, right? And then we built this program on top of Mount Everest, so for a lot of businesses, right, the business in and of itself, that mouthpiece, that voice to the community, that leadership is not as big or large. So when you build your education partner program or you build your academy on top of that, the recognition that building a certification doesn't mean what happened at HubSpot is going to happen there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's what it should be, right? If your target market isn't every business in the world, essentially every SMB in the world, then it's taking a step back and saying, well, how can we create a program that's focused on the most important thing, right? Which is helping the users or customers be successful in their jobs to help their businesses grow using your software or your product, right? That's what matters. Then from there, you can start pulling all these pieces together.
So what exactly then is the difference between mediocre education or education that's actually going to bring impact to your business and drive revenue? Like, what's the difference between those things, and why are people not doing it?
Yeah,
why are people getting it wrong?
There's so many things here. Let's try to start from the top. I'd say the first thing is that businesses that have created a successful customer education program or an academy program, they see the influence on that work, on that program, on their top line metrics, right? So they can see people who did or people who didn't have more retention versus less retention, right? More product usage, less.
Yeah.
And so it's gone from like, what is this nice to have thing to now like, oh, we need a customer education team, right? There's multiple times now where I'll have executives from a SaaS business come to me and say, we just closed Series C, and one of the stipulations of this round of funding is that we start a customer education team. And I don't even know what that means, right? So it's like now all of a sudden the push is coming not from super like rock star CSMs who realize, wait a second, there's a way to scale what we're doing, but it's coming from the top down. And so many times that means like, oh, we need one. Okay, line item in our budget. We're going to put that in customer success and put one person on that. Come back to me in 6 months or a year and tell me how it's impacting retention. Right. And so what it instantly does is puts this one person in this situation where they're very tactical, right? Because it's like now they have to move a number tomorrow. So what's that number they're going to move? Probably ticket deflection, which is going to help, but it's not going to be the scale engine you're looking for or what the stats are promising from research studies. So the tactical, the tactical piece, and many times what I find starts with the executive, starts with somebody who says we need a customer education program to solve for the number. Right? And the strategic customer education teams, the corporate academies that are built, it's executives or somebody coming in and saying, we need to solve for the customer. Like if you take a step back, yes, we need to absolutely reduce ticket deflection. We can do all of those things. But first and foremost, who is the person using the software? What is their job they're trying to do? Because at least I know this personally, when you get hired into a new role, how much of that new role do you actually know how to do versus you figure it out? Right. And like, it's probably a lot. And so it's the same thing with everybody using the software, right? It's like, you're not hiring all these people that are like going into a role to use the software and they're rock stars, right? Like it's like the new job. It's something that got assigned to them and they didn't even know it existed before. It's another responsibility put on their plate that they've never even thought of, right? So it's, yes, learning the software is important, but most likely a big portion of those folks aren't going to know how best to use that software, right? And so that's the big thing to think about is strategic teams are solving for the customer and then working their way backwards to the numbers. And that's truly a game changer for how people within that program and within the business approach the short-term and long-term success of a customer education team.
A mediocre team would be focusing on things at the tactical level just for performance metrics. And a more strategic one, like a more outstanding team would be focusing on more strategic stuff. How can you do that with a small team? Because you said that one person does have to focus on it tactically, right? So if you don't have a big team and you are just starting out, how can you generate some ROI at a strategic level to show that, hey, we should be growing this team?
It's a good question. So there's a bunch of things to do. I think the first is to figure out how to show the influence on whatever educational content you're creating having on the customer base. So what I mean by that is merge your learner data with your product usage data and your customer success or CRM data. Like that's like the first thing. When I talk to one-person teams, actually just in the last 2 weeks, I've spoken to 2 one-person teams working at software businesses, both of whom are are either one has just hired somebody to join the team, so they got their second headcount, and the other one has that budgeted. And both of them had the same story, which was, I needed to show this. Nobody in the business had the time to help me. I learned the very basics of SQL, wrote a query, and showed the influence, right? Like, it's that.
So accurate.
Right?
We're laughing because we both get it.
Totally, right? But the person with that mindset is going to be an awesome customer education leader, right? It's like it's an entrepreneur, right? It's an entrepreneur building a business inside an existing business, right? You have to be willing to get
exactly how we feel.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we both feel.
And it's like exciting, right? Because there is so much opportunity, right? If you pull off a HubSpot, a Hootsuite, a Salesforce, right? All of those teams started as nothing, right? It wasn't like we have a SaaS business model and this is part of it, right? That was always an add-on. And so that's the exciting part. But it definitely is, there has to be some type of numbers. And then for the folks who aren't able to get those numbers, don't have the skills, that don't have the time, the other way to do it, and this is what we did at HubSpot, is to think about how to tell stories with qualitative data. Right? So if your educational program does have long form, video-based training, right? What are the NPS questions that you're asking? Right? And being able to look and say, okay, we have our NPS questions. We have customers who have actually gone through this. Let's reach out to them. Let's ask them, what are they doing differently? Right? Let's see, is there a manager that we can speak to? And starting to get those stories, right? So there wasn't a time when our VP back in the day, like we would never present to the executive team without having those stories, right? And knowing that if our executives, which happened, were like, hey, pull that person in next time. I want to talk to them. Like they were going to come in and talk to them and share that experience. And so for many times, like I talk to businesses, they're like, our product data is not tracked. Right? Like our CRM is in like 2 different CRMs right now, right? Every business prioritizing different things. There's acquisitions. Like that's life, right? That's just part of the opportunity you have as a customer education leader. But it then goes back to, well, how are you going to tell that story when you only have qualitative data, right? And it's making the learners, those customers, right? They are the rock stars. They are the superstars, right? They are your first promoters. And so that's the approach that I always recommended, what we actually did at HubSpot in those first couple of years, when we didn't have the data and we couldn't show the data.
And the beauty of this actually is that you've actually come up with a framework to help us actually understand this, the key differences between tactical and strategic. Of course, Director of Learning, you've broken this down into a science.
Certainly. And yeah, the pillars of the framework, it's really thinking about the job, right? Everything we just talked about in the last 5 minutes didn't touch on any educational content in and of itself, right? Like we're talking about program leadership, right? How are you going to lead this program, set a vision, communicate the program management of it, right? The stakeholder management. How are you going to figure out who in the business has the data that you need so you can write your own queries, right? Or even get access to it. There's so much about leading a customer education team and really leading any program inside a SaaS business. And so those first 3 that we always talk about, program leadership, program management, stakeholder management, you need those skills to be successful running a program in a SaaS business, period, the end, right? Yes. Then you have the content. And this, obviously, there's so much involved here. I'd say this is the place where there is the most collective knowledge in the customer education corporate academy world, which is how do we develop our content, right? What is that content going to look like? And that can go into, of course, a lot of detail. But from a high level, to me, the winning strategy always there is modular content. Right? If everything should be a small asset that can be made up into a series of assets that make up a lesson, that then make up a course, you need to be able to update those easily, keep track of them, know what is currently in good standing versus needs to be updated. But there's a lot there. Then is the tech stack. Right? So what tech are you using? Right? Are you using an LMS? If so, what LMS? Are you using authoring tools? Have you decided to skip over the authoring tools and just go video first approach? If you are doing video, what editing tools are you using? What video kits? There's a lot there in the tech stack. And then 6, we always talk about learner growth, right? So learner growth is just like, okay, we built all of this great content and now where is everybody? Right? It's like, SEO, can we add this to the blog? If it's customer content, it's like, can we add it to the knowledge base? learner growth, right? And this is like, if we were drawing, like if I had like, I could be drawing like this was a whiteboard right now, what we'd realize is learner growth is connected to the tech stack, which is connected to the content, which is connected to stakeholder management, right? So it's like everything is so interconnected, but that learner growth piece, whether you're focused on the industry or you're focused on customers or partners, it's very much figuring out what part of the marketing do you own versus do you need to collaborate with the marketing team, the services team, et cetera. And that, to use the same words again, that would be more operationalizing your marketing when you're building something into an existing playbook, right? So I love that with implementation. Right? It's not like going to the implementation team and saying like, hey, if you hear this use case, this would be really helpful. Yeah, you want to have those conversations. But more importantly, going to leadership and saying, okay, here's your current customer journey through the implementation phase to time to value. How are we going to figure out the best way to use the educational content that exists so that the implementation specialists aren't teaching somebody how to click through the tool or aren't teaching somebody best practices, but rather they're coming to that implementation call saying, all right, this is what I set up. This is what I'm trying to do. Can I have your feedback as an expert?
I love that because we're literally doing a lot of the things that you're talking about, and it's just very, very validating.
Oh yeah. Like even
super validating.
The idea around like customer education as a component of marketing is like
huge.
So huge. Like so many people think it's just a segregated, two completely different teams. One's focused on like customer education actually after somebody is a product user, right? Like how to enable them on the product, which isn't the case half the time. Like there is that opportunity to use education for bringing people in and
it's like
using
it's the whole
journey.
Customer journey from like top of the funnel all the way down to like back like advocacy basically.
And I think like that's something I see all the time. So on the plus side, on Thinkific Plus, like we get a lot of these clients who are coming to our sales team who are ready to start their customer education program, and they're kind of at that exact stage you mentioned where it's like, hey, I got tasked to do this project, like I need to find a system that's going to let me do it. And the buyer isn't necessarily the user. Like the person who's actually building out this academy isn't actually the person who is even like aware of the customer education program. It's just like something that's been tacked onto their role. And like, that is something that I think I feel like one of the key pieces that we can pull from like mediocre education to like education that actually fuels businesses is like, what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're like, how are you shaping your academy to really like support the roles of your business, but also kind of think of it from like a larger overall customer journey, I think.
Yeah, because then you're actually hitting some metrics that the business actually cares about. I mean, like they do care about like products and the retention and stuff, but like now you're getting more bang for your buck for one thing that you're creating, and you can like repurpose that all throughout their journey.
Yeah,
this is great.
Spot on there.
Well, okay. Okay, number 7, supporting community. So that's the 7th pillar.
Yeah. So supporting community, typically I put it at the bottom for a reason. It's usually the one that's focused on the least, and you could argue it should or shouldn't be, but I think typically it makes sense. The support piece is the support of the learners, right? So if they're, for example, they take a certification and they have to wait 24 or 48 hours before they can take the test again, right? That's a common feature most LMSs have, or some version of that, and they needed to pass that test to get their promotion. And they waited till the last minute, and now they're asking for special privileges and can it be reset? Like we had that all the time in HubSpot, right? Like this was an internal learning. We had to get this certification. I didn't. How do you manage that, right? Or just like, hey, my computer crashed. I lost internet halfway through the test and it timed out on me. And now I have to wait 48 hours. And I don't want to blame the user for that. So, and then the questions just start coming in, right? And so as the team grows, as more people are consuming the content, the more things that there's going to be bugs, something's going to happen. And that creates support tickets, for lack of a better word, right? And it's like those support tickets are either going to go to an email address or they're going to go to the support team, right? And then they're going to start creating categories of tickets for your program, and you're now actively deflecting tickets while creating more tickets. So how can you think about being proactive, right? Like, what are all of the FAQs that you can address ahead of time? And thinking about where can we bring people in a more scalable way, right? So some businesses have communities that exist to deflect tickets, essentially. And so, how can you create a space there for folks who have questions, bring people there? The community aspect is, I would say, less talked about a lot, but less actualized in terms of how you can blend the experience of a learner on demand with a community where things are being shared, work is being created, feedback is being given. Certainly, if we were talking about a list of trends, that definitely seems where people are trying to go. But there's just some things to figure out, and some more businesses who are willing to invest in it to figure out truly how can we get that flywheel going of people, the collective knowledge again, truly being there in the community to help each other learn and grow, and not simply ask questions or answer questions based off of existing knowledge they have.
I'm gonna get our team to watch this interview. Just because it's just check marks everything we're doing. I love it,
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've kind of gone through the 7 pillars, can we compare a little bit between the tactical and the strategic teams and across these pillars?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about kind of the program leadership, solving for the numbers, solving for the customers. The next one, I think, when we think about program management, is this idea of siloed and aligned. And we touched on that a little bit. And I think, Gabby, you said that the idea of how do you embed the content that you've created into existing programs, right? And that is a key to a strategic team, right? I'm not sitting down and just saying, I'm solving for the customer. I know customers need X, Y, and Z, right? Yes, that may be the case. That should be a significant amount of points put into your final decision based off of those insights. But then it's actually going to the teams that are driving the business metrics and understanding their needs, right? And that's kind of that stakeholder management piece, which is informed of, hey, this is what we're doing, company, our customer education team, versus this is how we're trying to solve this problem with onboarding. How could we use education as part of this new customer journey, right? Or we're realizing that companies that don't get to a certain amount of number of products used by this date churn at a much higher rate. Where can we begin using education? What are some different approaches we could take, right? That's the strategic mindset of teams that are thinking about education as an influence to their numbers, right? So it's I have a team that can help me reach my numbers, and they're probably not in my line item of my budget, right? That's an exciting thing. So it's getting that alignment and getting so aligned that you're consulted. And if we could just put a infinity loop here on this slide, we probably should, because for anybody who's been in a SaaS business, rarely does someone stay in the same job for 2 years, right? And rarely does, if the business is growing or not, the existing processes from marketing to sales to services are changing, right? More data, more insights, we're making updates, we're changing. And so it's this idea of you don't just get aligned, right? It's a constant thing you're doing, is how do you drive that alignment? And that all comes back to understanding the business's top level goals, the departmental goals. What are VPs being goaled on? Going as far as if you can figure out how are they getting their bonuses, right? Depending on how transparent your business is. What actually matters to them? What do they wake up every day and say, I've got to move that number? And then,
next question. Mm-hmm. And then, the company question. We'll just ask that next time.
Yeah. So from the stakeholder management side, that's really what it is. It's just constantly keeping a pulse on the different folks across the business.
So I had a question, because you mentioned here, stakeholder management, informed at best is meaning you're informing the other people about it. And the consulted part is if people are asking you and you're consulting everybody about where that content fits throughout the journey and other teams. Is that what you're trying to?
I see. Yeah. So informed at best would be meaning you as a customer education team would be informed by your stakeholders of something that's happening within the business. So like, hey, everybody, just want to let you know, we're rolling out a new implementation process. Right? And you're the customer education team saying, wait, what? There's a new there's a new implementation process. Like, we just were informed about this and it's going live. Like, we didn't even have a chance to help, right? Like, we exist to help these different departments in the business be successful, and you're telling us with the rest of the business, right? That's what I'm thinking about informed, whereas consultant would
That's what you mean. Yeah, I like it. I'm like checking off in my head, do we do these things? And I'm like, yes. So it's my own selfish need here, why I'm here. So for content, yes.
Yeah, so from a content perspective, I'd say the tactical teams typically solve for the now, right? It's like, okay, we need a course, we're going to build it, right? And they're creating that course most likely as quickly as possible or as high fidelity as possible. It's taking a long time, but the focus is so much solving for the now and solving for what needs to get out the door. Whereas strategic teams are like, okay, we're going to solve for the later state of our program, and we're going to do the things that scale now. And that's there's intricacies there, but really what we're getting at here is every time we're creating a piece of content, we're creating content debt. And so
what's that mean?
It means that someday it's going
to
content debt. So someday it's going to need to be updated. Right. So like if we're if we're creating customer education that's touching the product, if we create a course today, right, that goes live, and then we create our next course based off of hopefully being consulted, but maybe just being informed of what's going on in the business. We identify what our customers need. We create our second course. By the time that second course goes live in 1 to 6 months, that first course is probably out of date. And there's probably definitions in between those two courses on the same thing that are actually probably a little bit different. Examples are used differently, right? So now we were solving for the now of create this course, but we're missing the fact that if we don't think about our architecture first and how we're going to be able to keep these things up to date, we're going to get into a place where we are creating and updating the same things over and over again, and we come across as a team that is not scalable, right? Is not efficient when it certainly could be, but that comes to the architecture of your content and the program, and less about your inability as a stakeholder to raise more money for your internal startup, which is your customer education team.
Think scale is what I always say about like anything that we're doing, any program. I'm like, okay, this isn't scalable. How can we make this scalable so it's not making more work for us in the future? Like, always, is this scalable? Okay, talk a little bit more about your tech stack then.
Yeah, so tech stack, I think the easiest way to think about it is you have your learner data, right? If you're lucky enough to have your learner data. And so that's, number of registered users or active users, course completion, certifications, etc. And all of that many times is in its own silo. So you can report on those things, but it's separate from the rest of the business's data infrastructure. Right? So the rest of the business is going to be using a load of different tools, and most of those are in a SaaS business are going into a system, a larger data system, whether that's like a Snowflake database or some type of large database with some usually front end that allows you to easily pull that data, merge that data, do cohort analysis without having to actually write SQL. And so all of that's going on, and your learning data and your LMS is segregated from the rest of it. Right? A CSM goes in and they can see the health score. They can see whatever system they're in. They can see so much information about what people have consumed, what are they doing, what product they've used, but the learning piece doesn't exist there.
Right, because we found and this is the piece that, the statistic here is like people who do training, they're much more able to like work independently. They're more they're more able to adopt the product quicker. There are metrics that have correlations between the two, and it's just when they're segregated, it's really hard to make those conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I always say like this is kind of tongue in cheek, but like a customer education program in and of itself, even if the content like didn't exist and you just did a cohort analysis of people who signed up versus people who didn't, the people who signed up are going to most likely have higher retention, right? They're going to have higher product usage because they're opting in to learn because they're trying to do something, right? So like customer education teams actually have like a head start when it comes to showing the influence on these metrics, right? And then it's like, how much influence can you have, and how can you best, do that cohort analysis and truly meet the learner or the user where they are and what they're trying to learn, right? And it's like, okay, we can get them in because that 20 to 30% of your database is always going to be, or your customers or the industry, it's always going to be prioritizing learning and growing. And then you have that other 20 to or 80 to 80% or so, 80 to 70% that are like, maybe they'll come, maybe they'll check something out, but they're not going to be the ones that are like basically guaranteed to be power users of your software. And so when you think about those kind of different cohorts, it isn't just creating the content that's helpful, but also inspirational, right? That's why in our purpose, it was to educate and inspire, because you have to get that loop of I've learned something, I went and did it, I saw success, what more can I learn, right? I want to go back
getting
now
them
and get
back.
better.
Yeah. So true. It's like one of those things where like, I don't know the quote, but it's like, it's easier to get your customer to buy more and stay than it is to have them leave and get a new customer.
Yes.
Like, you're basically, all these people are raising their hand about how they want to use your product and like be the best at your product. And like, you just have this group of customers just sitting there waiting to be like,
nurtured. Like, how do you nurture these power users? And like, and it's actually really good because like, if you have an indication of the 20% who are like, I'm going to take this course and then I want to know more. It's like, well, how do you give them more? How do you keep them within your ecosystem? And like a community, because those are your most active users, how do you like empower them, enable them, keep giving back to them? How do you build a community around those people? Actually, I'm getting ideas just from this conversation right now. So, we talked a bit as well about the learner growth. So it was just more about like, can you speak a little bit more between like GTM playbooks and ad hoc marketing and sales here? Yeah. This is a very important one, I think, especially with the stage where we're at.
Definitely. So the GTM kind of playbooks, that's what we're talking about of thinking of programmatically, right? So if I'm a sales team and I have my demo deck, right? Is there a slide in that demo deck that pulls up, here are our resources, right? A lot of times say, hey, we have a blog, we have, our support, right? They'll talk about the support, the community, but many times they'll forget about the customer education team, right? They'll forget to say like, hey, by the way, like the success rates of implementing software are, not as high as anybody would like them to be. And everybody's aware of that who actually has to implement a software system. Right? The sales team should be leveraging, hey, our business is invested in your success so much so that once you buy, all of the educational resources your team needs to be successful are waiting for them once you sign up. Right? And that's free of charge, or maybe you charge depending on your business model. But that's the sales part of the playbook, right? At HubSpot, we went as far as to get HubSpot Academy in G2 under educational programs, and our sales team would pull that up back in the day. Who knows how the sales process works now, but they'd say like, okay, so here's HubSpot versus our competitors in G2. Let's check out HubSpot Academy versus our competitors. Wait, that
was a differentiator.
Yeah, exactly. The differentiators. And so how are you, again, like that wasn't anybody on our team. That was the sales team, right? We're talking to the sales team, understanding how they sell. So it goes back to understanding those stakeholders and understanding like what are ways that we can help the sales team close deals. And that really always started with us going to the best sales reps, right? The sales reps who were coming to us and saying, hey, this stuff's awesome, right? Finding those people and saying like, why is this helpful? How do you use this in a sales call? From the industry side, someone says, you know what? Don't have budget. Talk to me in 6 months. That sales rep, if they did their job well, know all of the pain points that already exist with that prospect, right? So in a month from now, that sales rep can set a reminder, reach out and say, hey, I know you said X, Y, and Z was top of mind. Our team just came out with a course. I think you'd find it super helpful. Now all of a sudden,
dude,
So-
this is like our team. So like you're on the plus team under there. So that's exactly, we're kind of merging that. So it's like, it's a selling point for enterprises too, to onboard them. And also say like, we're not just going to onboard you. You don't have just a CSM. You have all this other like education that's going to specifically help you within your business. That's a selling point.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And even like address, like what you said about addressing pain points, like that alone, like the amount of people who do research before they actually get onto a demo is huge. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you can address those needs or even like provide content that's free of access for somebody to address those needs, like that's pretty impactful.
Yeah. And like, if you looked at like a time, like how much time with your competitors, like if somebody's making a decision, how much time are they spending engaging with your competitors' content and site? When it comes to a course, like that's an hour, right? Like in that content, you're going to be sharing your perspective on how things should be done, right? So I think, there's just so much value. So that's just the GTM playbook from the sales, right? But if we think about the entire go-to-market, you have the marketing side, and then of course services, starting with implementation to ongoing customer success, right? And what are all of those different playbooks, right? When someone's flag goes from green to yellow in the health score, right? Like what are some playbooks? Can those be automated, right? New point of contact, that was always a big one. So you have a primary user of your software, they leave, right? That email address bounces for the first time. What happens, right? Like, and then a new user is added, and that user is added as the admin or added this primary point of contact. How do you get that person ramped up? Like, what are the chances that they used your software last or have ever used software, right? Like, okay, so now really what should happen is re-implementation starting from the beginning, but no business like wants to extend the time to, the time to value or the lifetime value of the customer by spending the money to put them through onboarding again. Wow, what a great self-paced way to create a new user onboarding program using your educational content. So those are just examples of thinking about the business needs the company is trying to solve at any given point in time. And how can you think about an educational approach, a scalable approach to solving that problem using educational content, or simply being, a link in an email, right? That might all it might be is like you're the third link in an email, but that's just reminding people, hey, we have all the resources you need. If you're trying to learn something in a little bit more detail, if this is your first time doing X, Y, and Z, we have everything you need. So again, and that'll change, right? 6 months from now, what the business needs, what the goals are, what the focus is, that's all going to change. Yeah. And that's why we're like going all the way back up, right? Make it modular so you can piecemeal it, put it back together and repackage it, right? Make sure you're staying up to date with your executives and your leadership team and understanding their goals and how this can fit in. And then just realizing again that like a large percentage of building a successful customer education team or an academy team is the work you'll be doing internally and not the content itself that you'll be creating. And that can be really tough, especially if you're somebody who comes from the learning and development instructional design world, is to realize, and I know we struggle with this at HubSpot, of like pure perfect education, like takes a long time to develop, and a software business just moves too quickly for that. And so it's finding this 100%. Compromise between the two, which is, pulls at the heartstrings on both sides. But at the end of the day, it's, iterative product or agile product development. Like we're building, we're shipping, we're getting better. The goal here isn't to have a Hollywood film. Right? The goal here is to have something that educates and inspires users to help them be successful. And for a startup, that might be like you clicking record with a green screen with half your head cut off, right? Like, but with what you're saying is helpful, that's a win, right? So like that's, I think what we always have to go back to again is thinking about the branding, right? From a marketing perspective, like where is the business in their growth trajectory and where is the program and what is good enough, right? What is good enough to drive what the users need, not what is good enough for it to be the flashiest, most beautiful educational content developed by a SaaS business to date.
That's a good segue actually to our next question. Yeah. Which is around investment. Like how much should be invested in a customer education program? Like specifically thinking about that, like knowing that you will have to iterate and have to change, like how much should you be investing? This is an easy question.
It is that's a very difficult question. There's probably 10 to 15 questions that I ask somebody when asked that question back to them to figure it out. Some of those questions that I always try to understand and dig into is, where is the business currently in terms of their growth, right? Are they a startup with 50 people? Are they a business, Series D IPO'd already, and they have 10,000 employees? Right. So understanding the internal business, right? Then there's a lot of other things. Understanding how many users do they have? What is the complexity of their product? If they haven't gone public yet, what is their exit strategy? Right? If you're a business that's building like a really awesome product and you're like, we have 3 or 4 large players in the industry who haven't tackled this area of whatever category it is, we know we're going to get acquired, or our goal is to get acquired. That's our exit strategy. The educational content and how you develop that is probably going to be much different, because you're not going to be investing in a long-term customer education program and more on driving success in the short term, right? So I think that's always one thing. The next is category development. Right? If you're in a category that's well-defined and developed, right? Like if I was starting a project management software company right now, unless I have a very unique approach to it, like it would be really hard to go in there and be like, here's why waterfall exists, agile exists, and I have this new thing, right? Like, So investing in a significant amount of category development, right, that thought leadership area, probably wouldn't make sense. Whereas other businesses I talk to, it's like, hey, this change has happened. This technology is available now. Like, there's a huge opportunity here, and our business is investing from our CEO and the talks he or she does to, the individuals. Like, everything in this business is all about educating the market. In that case, I'd be like, okay, so the investments there, the understanding, the key strategic approach to going to market is thought leadership in this business. We're going to want to invest more, right? Because we're going to want to amplify that, like we did at HubSpot. So and that's just a couple of them, right? The list keeps going. But the investment kind of boil it down. It's like, it's going to be proportionate, most likely, to where your business is in the investment life cycle, right? From angel to mezzanine, DEF, IPO, post IPO. So I think that's part of it. And then it's the business model, right? The complexity of the software, and then, what is the exit strategy of that business? So those are some of the things that I always ask as we're approaching that conversation around, like, what is the right amount of budget for a team?
Got it.
It's a really good answer, though. Like, it really does depend. There's so many things to take into consideration. My brain was like, my brain was processing all of that. So previously you had discussed about, like, it's less about the content now, and that sometimes there are like instructional designers that are having a hard time going into this more strategic role. What's like the best type of role that the content creator should have to reach this more strategic end?
Yeah, so I would say from a program leadership perspective, if you're running the program, it is less about the content. It's 20% content, 80% everything else. From an individual content creator on the team, it's what I see happen many times is the content creator thinks of themselves as, my job is to create a course. Right? Which makes sense, right? Because that's the product that they're developing. But unlike a product team, right, you don't have a UX person, you don't have a product marketer who's going to understand the needs of the market coming to you and saying, this is what to build. Right? And so when I think about the way at least we structured our team at HubSpot and thought about changing it multiple times, but never really did, was thinking about this instructional designer, this content developer, this instructional experience designer, whatever we're going to call them, as somebody whose role is to develop a product, right? An educational product, an instructional product. And to do that well, they're going to need to understand the product that they're teaching, right? They're going to need to understand the people who use that product that they're teaching about, and they're going to need to understand the industry that user's in who is using the product, right? So if we boil down empathy, right? They need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of the person they're teaching. And then, of course, yes, they need to have instructional design skills. We definitely want ideally, they would have some video editing skills and be really strong with the written language. So for at least what I've seen is you want somebody who is, our job profile was always somebody who's entrepreneurial, right? Somebody who, has, of course, good written skills, somebody who has a bias towards helping people over helping themselves, right? Because if you do the job well of being a professor, instructional designer, whatever word we're using, you're going to acquire a lot of really powerful knowledge, right? And you can use that for yourself to go get a job and become a practitioner, or you can use that to continue to build upon the lessons and content you've developed to help more people. So that help first mentality is really big. So I always leaned on the side of if there's somebody coming out of a support team or customer success team who is excited or interested in the team, without a question,
hire those people up. Yeah, train those guys up.
Train them up, and then find that diversity, right? Bring in somebody who has instructional design, who's just I can't imagine not creating the perfect course, right? Because now you have someone with that business acumen of these customers are calling in every day feeling like this, right? This is what they're trying to accomplish. Then you have the person who's this is how education should be. That's what you want, right? From a diversity of thought perspective, you want that person who's we have to create perfect training. This other person saying, this is all the user needs. And that is helpful. But when you're starting the team, I'm always how can I hire somebody out of support? How can I hire somebody from customer success implementation? Because that first iteration of training, it needs to be quick, it needs to be on point, and it needs to truly understand the pain, as well as the opportunities that the folks that you're teaching are developing. We can address the, adult learning theory and many other things later. But first and foremost, it's how do we get person A who has problem B to goal C? And that's it. And many times that just means understanding the customer, the business, and the industry.
That's very validating to myself.
Yeah.
It could just be a self-fulfilling prophecy because that was me as well. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think so because when we were creating our own job description or a growth model, the competency model, it was really it started off as a course creator. I started off as a course creation specialist, customer education specialist. And I was that's not what I do. That's not what I think I do. And so I kind of nudged my manager to switch into program manager. And it's I'm a product manager, but for a program, I literally do all the other things. Yeah. And empathy is the biggest thing. So maybe you're onto something because I think you really are onto something here.
Yeah.
And that what you've said in a structure, or it's just really validating and we are just very similar.
No, but it's also even with our customer success team, it's they know the product so well, and then they can speak to the customer and the client in a way that makes so much sense because they understand the problem that person is having, using X, Y, and Z in the system. And, the fact that they have that knowledge and then they can bring the solution to it. The fact that that's not even people aren't leaning on that for creating content. That's huge.
I should start checking down the list of all the customer support people and just champions and be
so come over here to the
just come onto this side. Come onto this side. All right. So we are just go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm no expert in building a learning culture, but something that I find fascinating with the businesses that I do see very successful with Academy programs is exactly, Gabby, what you're explaining, which is the business reinforces and incentivizes individuals within the organization to share what they're learning. And so at HubSpot, wow, we would have a CSM who, just like you said, did something 10 times, figured something out. They would share that with the CSM team. We'd go to them and be let's go, right? And all of a sudden now that thing that was helping 10 people is helping hundreds, if not thousands. And that CSM went from having an impact on a book of business, finite, to now essentially a infinite impact on an entire customer base. So they had outsized impact on the business, right? So if the business can put the right incentives in place for the customer success teams and the subject matter experts, it's not the individual from the customer training team or customer education team having to go and be like, can I please have 10 minutes of your time? It's like, I want to share this with the world. I know that I can have an impact. And so there's tons of great content out there around like a learning culture, but those are the little things too. If you can, nudge the managers or influence some of the folks that you're managing from a stakeholder perspective, you can really flip that script and go from outbound, right, trying to get people to give you or help you, to them coming to you and saying, we're ready.
Yeah. One question for you.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that a customer education program could cannibalize your customer success team? Like, do you think, like, if they are, let's say, if you're providing this education on the product before they need answer, or like before it becomes a problem, like, do you think clients would still see value in having a customer success manager if they have the education on demand?
I think a large percentage, yes. I think there is depending on the complexity of the product and the price point of the product, I think we'll continue to see more product-led growth SaaS businesses where somebody is buying in a freemium, touchless way, right? So they use a free product, they upgrade. I think when we get more towards the higher end, the enterprise side of things, meaning humanity, hasn't found a way to automate a relationship to the level in which if there's $100 million on the line, or even $1 million or $50,000 on the line, depending on your business model, would justify an individual having a conversation and understanding someone. So I don't think for all SaaS businesses that'll happen, but I think on the lower complexity level products, we'll continue to see the use of educational content as a way to limit the amount of one-on-one human interaction that's required of a user to a business to keep them from churning.
Thank you so much, Chris. Like, I think we both learned a lot of things.
I'm so ready to go now. I have so much I want to do.
Love that. Okay, Chris, now we are entering our hot seat questions. Question number 1. What is the biggest failure in your whole journey with HubSpot?
For sure, it was developing years of content without having an architecture that made it easy for us to update. At one point in 2018, 50% of our educational content was out of date. That was the biggest failure, but also the best thing that forced us to rewrite how we worked and was a blessing in disguise. But that was the failure.
That's why you're an expert. It's because you did these failures and then you created a system, the 7-pillar system, because you learned from them.
You didn't just keep doing them again.
Yeah. You're like, now I'm going to teach you these 7 pillars so you know what to do because I've learned. And that's how you know you're an expert, because you failed a lot.
Exactly. I like to say anybody can create a HubSpot Academy in 4 years instead of 8 because you don't have to make all the mistakes we did.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Is customer education a revenue generator?
Yes and no. Yeah.
You hesitated. Oh no.
It has a impact on revenue, right? Whether that's your retention rates, your upgrade rates, maybe deflection or deflection of tickets, right? Which would be more almost on the profit side. It can be a revenue generator if you charge for it. But what we always found time and time again at HubSpot was when we looked at the downstream influence and impact on users, right? There was more money we got out of that from a retention and upgrade perspective than the money we'd get if we put a gate up that said, oh, you have to pay X amount per month for this content. So it's a strategy decision on do you want that revenue up front or on the back, and running an analysis to see. So I'd say yes, it's generating revenue or saving revenue for your business. It depends on how you want to categorize and collect on that generation.
Awesome. Great answer. Okay, so we like to ask this question to everybody who shows up on the show. But like, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself before the start of all of this journey, what words of advice would you give yourself?
I think for myself in 2011, 2012, it would have been to continue to search and seek out people who are also doing what we were doing. In the beginning, there wasn't anybody, and it wasn't until after I left HubSpot and I started connecting with folks on LinkedIn and communities and other places that I realized the wealth of knowledge of the collective community. And so that's what I'd say is like, get out there, meet people who are in similar roles to you doing similar things, and just try things. Like, don't take yourself too seriously and get that content in front of customers. Don't take the time to wait to make it perfect. You can learn and iterate along the way.
So true.
Done is better than perfect, always say. Well, this comes to our time. Thank you so much, Chris, as well as Gabby, for joining us on this show. I had such a great time. If you guys had a great time and you like this video, give us a big thumbs up. If you want to watch more of these kinds of videos, subscribe to our channel. All right, guys. See you guys next week.